just to circle back to the League of Ireland, lads, I guess we were looking ahead to Bohs against Rovers last week. Rovers end up winning the game 1-0. They're 10 points clear at the top of the table. Dundalk with 2 games in hand, obviously, in that situation. Next week, though, is the start of the season-defining patch for Rovers, isn't it? This isn't... maybe Dundalk do win those 2 games in hand and we do have a proper title race, but it is always going to be, at the end of the season, defined on how they do in Europe, right?
Yeah, I think, Stephen Bradley, it's a very challenging time in his life. He has, he's worried about his son, and coming into that almost defining part of his reign to an extent with Shamrock Rovers. Notwithstanding, he's had an unbelievable time, but he was under so much pressure early on, and he's turned them into really, really good champions, double champions, and it'll be a massive success regardless of what happens in Europe. But I think the chapter about Europe in the autobiography or the biography will be very important, because I think he feels that they haven't achieved what they could have achieved in Europe. And if you break down what Rovers have done in Europe, it's not bad. I mean, they've claimed some scalps, they've done well in good games, but I think what was intriguing the other night was Jack Byrne, Danny Mandroiu and Graham Burke did not start. 2 of them didn't play at all against St. Pat's, and they were still the better team, but you just get the sense, even from talking to them afterwards, that so much is geared towards Europe. And this game against Hibernians in Malta, I mean, victory ensures that they're essentially playing in Europe well into August in some shape or form, and I think that's the bare minimum. They have to win this game and take it from there, and I don't think they'll have left any stone unturned. The one thing I will say is they still have massive pace problems with the team they played on Monday night, and they will probably change this up. They're not a quick team at all, and I think this found them out in Europe last year, and they've players off the bench like a Maku to come in, but you'd wonder, is he in the form? Gaffney's in great form, but again, he's not the quickest player in the world, and they've no real pace in midfield. Andy Lyons is their quickest and possibly nearly their best player this season. That could be a problem. I don't know what you think of that, Nathan, because it was obvious the other night. I mean, Aaron Green's goal was great, but Aaron Green's pace is basically gone, and it was more of an indictment to Pat's defending. I think that he got the goal, but that's the one thing I'd worry about in Europe, that they just don't have a second gear if they need to, go down that route.
Yeah, pace of players, but I think pace of play as well, because at times it can feel quite pedestrian. They are more than happy to just recycle the ball consistently and grind teams down, which works in the League of Ireland because they're better players than everybody else. And you're right, this will define them what happens in Europe, because I don't think there's any question they've been the best team this season over the last couple of seasons. But are they a great team? I think that the jury's still out on that. We've been waiting since week 1 of the league for them to ignite, to come and demolish teams, and they're still sort of getting these 1-0, 2-0 victories where the opposition have a couple of chances, and it still doesn't feel as though Bradley's quite sure as to what his best attacking side is. Obviously, he's not helped by the fact that Jack Byrne, has had, I think he's only played 190 minutes all season in the league, and he was not involved last night. Is he going to be fit for Europe next week? So it just feels though they're missing a bit of an X factor at the moment. But there is the possibility that they've been trying to prime, that everything has been built towards this part of the season, that they've sort of trusted that their talent would get them through the first half of the League of Ireland season, and now fitness-wise, that they're ready for the next 2 months when they're going to have 2 games a week and huge European games. But there just seems to be a bit of an inconsistency in that, Graham Burke, who's been injured last few weeks, comes off the bench, makes an impact, gets a start. Doesn't quite happen from, Mandreu, who's been brilliant at times over the last few weeks, but needs to do it every single game. The midfielders, again, Dylan Watts at times has been exceptional, one of the best players in the league. At times, it's not quite happening for him. So I think our entire judgment of where the Shamrock Rovers side are compared to, say, Dundalk of 5 years ago will depend on what happens in Europe.
Just a couple of other bits and pieces. We got former Pats defender Luke McNally signing for Burnley from Oxford for €1.5 million this week. Have you seen much of this guy, Nathan?
Not a huge amount. No, I think Johnny will have probably seen a good bit of him back in the league before he went over. This is interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's quite a lot of money to be spending on a player from the lower leagues from Burnley's point of view, and I think there's going to be a nice little knock on for Pats out of it as well. But it's obviously going to then probably lead on to Nathan Collins leaving Burnley, that he'll be Nathan Collins' replacement at Burnley for, if the fees reported are true, Nathan Collins is going to become the most expensive Irish player of all time over the next few months. So anything that sees good Irish players progressing to another level is obviously a good thing. We've got any amount of centre halves. But I don't know, Johnny, from your sense, was this something when Luke McNally went over, you thought, yeah, destined for, well, what's it going to be, championship football now?
Yeah, I'm not overly surprised. I remember, it's funny I mentioned Aaron Green. I remember talking to Tim Clancy after a game. Drogheda played Rovers. I think they ended up losing 2 or 3-0, but did quite well in the game. When they were, could have been a cup game at the time. Drogheda were probably in the first division, and he was saying, like, Jesus, he completely outsprinted Aaron Green. And at the time, Aaron Green was pretty quick, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And the move away then happened or whatever. And I did a piece with him actually, Nathan, it was towards the end of the season, around April, because they were playing MK Dons, and he was going to be marking Troy Parrott. So I did a piece for the 42 on it, and it got very little traction. I was like, Jesus, must be like maybe people just don't read my articles, or maybe Luke McNally, he's so down the pecking order in terms of Irish centre backs that like people aren't, like, he hasn't really attracted that much attention. Because I was talking to an Oxford fan, and he's like, this lad is our best prospect, and he will probably get a move. And that particular game, I think he did very well against Troy Parrott. But I was really taken by just how utterly sound he was. Like, he's so humble, down to earth. He was talking about his mother coming over and bringing him like black pudding from Ireland, and he was really like happy to kind of keep the connection with home. Still follows the League of Ireland. The following day, he was on the bus showing Pats and Rovers on the phone to, I think, their goalkeeper, and he was saying, what do you make of the standard of this league? I really like it. But the interesting one then is after the Collins stats came up from the game, where he clocked at 34 kilometres an hour before the goal or after the goal or whatever, I was like, Jesus, would you beat this lad in a sprint? Because McNally is really, really quick, like really quick, and I imagine he could be the fastest player basically in the Ireland squad if you were there. He's so quick, and that's a big asset of his game. He's really athletic, gets a lot of goals as well. And I think it's a great move for him. I'm absolutely delighted for him. As we all know, our centre back situation is really it's a bounty of riches at the moment. But he was guaranteed to get a move to a higher level, and the knock-on effect of where Collins goes will be fascinating. But I'm delighted for him. I think he's going to have a great career, and only going to get better as well under company.
Where do we want to see Nathan Collins go? Wolves, Leicester City, the two of the clubs that have been named as possible links.
Yeah, maybe Wolves. Like, I don't know, because they're a far more defensively orientated team. But I don't know what Nathan thinks.
Yeah, Wolves certainly last season at times, I don't want to say they were dull, but they were based around a very strong defence, and I think Romain Saiss has left, so there's probably a space there. Connor Cody's obviously a very experienced defender. Leicester probably have a higher ceiling. Last season was a disappointment, but I think they had a huge amount of injuries. There's probably more options at the back for Leicester, though. You probably have a bit more of a fight for his place. Fofana is back fit. Johnny Evans is still there as well. Maybe he takes Sayunchu's place. But it does seem he's going to one of those teams that's sort of between 6th and 10th in the Premier League, which, is a huge, huge step up for a guy who's only played really half a season of Premier League football. So I think it's brilliantly exciting, because I did think initially that he might be stuck at Burnley for this season, and that may not have been a bad thing with me and Tarkowski leaving. But it seems Burnley, there's a lot going on there in terms of the ownership, that they realise they want to strike now while he's in such form and so well touted. So either a Wolves or a Leicester look like good, solid Premier League teams right now. I think Leicester, though, have the higher ceiling, could well find themselves, playing a decent standard of European football again over the next couple of years if Brendan Rodgers stays at the club. So, yeah, fascinating to see how it develops. But what a story! What a story from, again, shows what you can do in such a short period of time. I know people expected a lot when he came from Stoke and captaining the team at such a young age, and Burnley spent a lot of money to bring him from Stoke. But to be at this stage already, where he can go and become a centre half at one of the best teams in the Premier League is huge for Irish football.